Okay, so we've got the recording started. Welcome everyone to the Database Committee meeting today, May 25th. Thank you again as you were patient as we got things hooked up here ready to go. Why don't we start with introductions? We'll start with those in the room first. How about with you, Courtney, just your name and your library?
Courtney Young, Village of Avon Public Library.
Okay.
Jeannie Moonen, Normal Public Library.
Karen Doris, Normal Public Library.
Maria Garcia, Peoria Public.
Cassandra Stokes, Peoria Public.
Megan Minnie, Galesburg Public Library.
Erin Roberts, Metamora Public Library.
Lori Haller, Washington District Library.
Joanne Hellman, Deacon Public Library.
Rebecca, Normal Public Library.
Karen McClure, Normal Public Library.
Wendy Adams Good, RSA.
Amanda Gray, RSA.
Liza Hickey, Peoria Public Library. Rhonda Bierman, RSA.
Miranda Calhoun, RSA.
Martha Troxel, RSA.
And then, of course, you know me, I'm Erica Laughlin with RSA. I'll go ahead and read the attendees online. We have, let me start at the top of the list. Okay, we have Becky Partee from Peoria Public, Beth Duttlinger from Lilliam Evans Library District, Bobby Mock from Quincy Public, Carla Scary from, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name, from El Paso Public Library, Debbie Gehrig from Dunlap Public Library, Jennifer Schote from Peoria Public Library, Melissa DeVerger from Quincy Public Library, my list jumped, Melody Heck from Galva Public Library, Monica Paget from Fond du Lac District Library, there's Rebecca Seaborn from Farmington Public Library, Rhonda, my trusty chat monitor, Chantry Miller from Blessing Health Professions Library, and then Lindsay Nichols from the Carthage Library. Okay, so before we get into our agenda, we have breaking news internally. Do you want to come up, Miranda, and share your good news? Our microphone is in the top of the computer.
I just announced this morning I accepted a position at Joliet Public Library, which is where my family is from. So my last day at RSA is going to be June 8th.
So we'll shift things around. We'll make things work with your cataloging request still being a priority, but this is a great opportunity for Miranda, so please help me congratulate her. So I think what we'll do next is dive into the agenda. I'm hoping I kept the agenda somewhat manageable because we have Roxy Klassen from Public joining us at 11:30 for the first part of the book repair workshop. So let's get started on the agenda, but I did want to mention too that if we don't cover anything, we'll see about an in-between meeting. I know things will be busy here, but we'll see what we can do if we don't cover everything or if there's additional questions and we need to meet again. So we'll just see how we do. Okay, so I'm going to go to a page we always go to for these meetings. So from our RSA support staff site, I did put under the RSA board committees groups today's agenda. We have the database management committee, and then we do have our agenda right here. If anybody in the room needs one, I think there's still plenty of copies in the back, so feel free to get up and pick one up if you didn't get one when you came in. So notice we're at number 2 now. Remember in January when we met, we tried to elect officers, but it almost seemed like it was too soon after the holidays. People were just a little bit still thinking about officer positions, not ready to make a commitment. So we extended the candidate time period until May. I did hear from a couple of you interest in the chair position, so I'm thinking maybe we can work something out with co-chairs since there were a couple people interested in that. I didn't hear anything about secretary, so other than Erin, thank you for your service, saying no thanks, I don't want to do it anymore, which is understandable. So the chair and the co-chairs, Liza Hickey from Peoria Public and then Erin Roberts from Illinois Prairie, both of you reached out to me about being the chair, so I was wondering if you'd be willing to co-chair together. Does that sound okay?
I only wanted to co-chair, so.
Oh, you wanted to, okay. Liza, are you okay with co-chairing? Okay. So what we'll do, I'll update the database committee page with your names and then your work emails. And then we typically have these officer time, I should say officer, what do you call it, like lengths of service, I guess. They're typically January to January, but I know the election, we remember extended it to this month. So now we'll do this again in January just to stay on the same cycle. But remember, there's unlimited terms for these, so if you want to keep doing it, that'd be great. Just remember with the chair and the co-chairs, plan to attend our RSA users group meetings so that you can give an update of what we talk about today. So if you can't make it to a users group meeting, just let me know, but I'm hoping you'll be able to attend in person at those meetings to give the update. And then, of course, any agenda ideas you might have, feel free to pass them along. Okay, but just to make sure I'm not making assumptions, nobody is interested in the secretary position, is that right? I hadn't heard anything, but I just wanted to reconfirm. Okay. Well, we'll continue to do recordings like Martha does for her circulation committee meeting, and then we'll just post those like we tend to do a couple weeks after the meeting. So that will be the best way. And then remember, too, we've posted all of the meeting resources down at the bottom of the page, so that's another way, too, if you missed part of the meeting or need to revisit a topic. Okay. I did want to give you, Erin, just a small gift to thank you for taking minutes for so long. I think you did it several years. I can't remember when you didn't do it. So if you want to come up and get your strangely wrapped gift, I'll let you pick which color. One of these is for Jennifer at Alpha Park, but since she's not feeling well today and not here, you can have your first pick. Okay. I know taking the minutes is not fun, so I do appreciate what you did to get those ready.
I do want to record it to help.
Take the green one? Okay. Okay. So let's go back to that agenda. Okay, so several topics here under what catalogers need to know. So what we're going to try to do, and again, this was breaking news with Miranda's new position, so I haven't checked with our HR department, but we'd like actually to try and hire the two catalogers from the same pool of applicants. So we'll keep the application period open. I know we extended it to try and widen the pool of applicants, so it closes tomorrow, but Kendall and I will be touching base with Rails HR to see about extending it maybe longer to get some more applicants so we can possibly fill 2 positions. The focus will still be your cataloging requests, so I'll be pitching in to help Rhonda with processing your cataloging requests, but that means, of course, some other things that we've been doing will need to wait. One thing, though, I want to make sure you know is not going to wait is dedupe resolution, which is something we'll talk about further down on the agenda. So some things like that definitely will continue, but there's other things, especially I know I had planned some library visits to existing members. Those will need to wait just so that we can shift our focus here until we get our team back up to speed. Okay. Let's see. So any questions about where we are right now? I know I didn't give you too many details, but we do have a couple new libraries joining RSA this summer, Williamsfield and Neponsit Public Libraries. So I think actually as we onboard new staff, it'll work to our advantage that these libraries will be submitting pretty steadily for a variety of materials. So I think we'll be in good shape with having plenty of cataloging requests, both with them and then the existing flow of what's coming in. But as you might expect, there's going to be delays in turnaround time. So just like you've already been patient doing with with the cataloging request so far. We'll continue to have probably a 1 to 2 week turnaround time. So I know it won't be as fast as what you were used to, but I really appreciate you continuing to submit and then just being patient as we work through. Okay. If you feel like, though, there's a cataloging request that may have slipped through the cracks, it wouldn't hurt to send an email to the help desk, and if you have the confirmation number from the cataloging request that came in that auto-generated email, you can always include that too, because that helps us search for it. Okay. So we'll take a break too, like we've been doing, from conducting those library photo visits where we digitally photograph brief records to get them replaced with OCLC records. That's something we'll wait to continue doing until we're fully staffed again. So if you were thinking of one of those cleanup projects, hold that thought, but we'll get to that once we're fully up to speed again. And then probably the best thing to do to keep informed as we fill our positions, and if there's any changes in cataloging request procedures, like I said, I'd like that to stay the focus. So I'm hoping we won't need to ask you to stop or anything extreme like that. But if there's any changes with that or with the recruitment process as we move further along, stay tuned to the RSA listserv. That'll be the best place to see updates as we move forward. Okay. Before we leave that topic, do you have any questions? Okay. This next one I know is going to be a bigger topic, so let's make sure we take our time here talking about the deduplication project. So the first thing I thought I would do is give you some background. We'll talk about our progress with CERC Dynex on resolving some of the problematic merges, and then we'll also talk about too what you can do on your end, and then we'll look at some examples of the trends that we've reported to CERC Dynex about records that merged wrong. We'll look at actual examples so that you better understand what was affected as you're seeing items in your collection that are no longer cataloged on the right record. So this will be a multi-part agenda item, so at any point if you feel like you're getting lost or something is unclear, both in the room or online, please chime in. Okay, so going back, just again, that first part to give you some background. So the goal of this deduplication project was for CERC Dynex to help us merge system-wide bibliographic records in our database from the Quincy migration, as well as existing records that we already had in our database that were identical, i.e. duplicates. So remember that dedupe, it involved a cataloging freeze through part of February and then into mid-March. The project finished on March 13th. It successfully merged quite a few of Quincy Public Library's records that came into our database where they had the same OCLC title control number of a record we already had. That part worked great. That caught lots of records. I don't have a hard and fast number, but Quincy has a very large collection, and they have a lot of similar titles as what you guys have. So a lot of their records that came in, we already had. So our record in RSA was kept, and then their holding was moved to the record. So that part worked well based on the OCLC title control number. What wasn't clear enough, though, is that title and material type matches, that information could have been incomplete on one record, yet records were still merged, even though it wasn't an exact match. And this is where it starts to get a little bit confusing. We were told that records needed to be a match when we were discussing the parameters for this project. What we weren't made clear enough of by CERC Dynex was that if there's incomplete description on one record, yet more complete description on the other, it still merges them. When we heard match, we thought that meant it had to be an exact match. This is one of those projects, like I was telling Jeannie at Normal Public, we've never done this before. I didn't know what questions to ask about match, what their definition of match was versus mine. So this is something that has been a painful project, but I do think, though, with Cersei Dynex, and this is the next part of the discussion, they know that we're very dissatisfied with how this turned out. They know that there was a lack of clarity in the discussions when we were setting up parameters. So I don't want you to feel like Cersei Dynex doesn't consider us as important. They do. We're one of their biggest customers. Kendall knows a lot of the executives. The conference actually in April in Salt Lake City was a good opportunity because I was able to go a level above the Cersei Dynex employee who helped us with this project. His supervisor was there, so that was a great opportunity to say, hey, we did this project, part of it worked well, but part of it didn't. What can you do to make this right? So we've started talking with Cersei Dynex, and they're running processing right now to identify records that merged due to problems with the title, and this involves some of the examples we'll look at here in another part of this agenda item. So they're starting to run these reports to identify merges that shouldn't have happened, and then we're going to talk then about, once we review those reports, running this on another clone server that we have here to make sure it goes as it should, and then scheduling it on our production server. So this is a multi-step process, but Cersei Dynex is working with us to make this right. Okay, some of the types of records that had problems with titles and then material types, graphic novels, large print, microfilm, special collections, multi-disc sets. So those are the types of records we're talking about, but again, the problems are stemming from differences in title and then also differences in material type, but those are some of the frequently problematic formats. Okay, so right now, like I said, we've had that initial discussion with Cersei Dynex at the conference, and then too about these two trends involving the title and material type. So right now they're running these reports. I'm hoping to hear back from them next week, but if I haven't, I'll just send them a note to see how it's going. So this process is ongoing, but like I said, once we review the reports, we want them to try it again on a test server, not the production server first. Once we move to the step, though, of doing this on a production server, there'll probably be another cataloging freeze. I don't have details yet, so just, again, make sure everybody who's affected by this is subscribed to our listserv, because that will be the best place to stay informed if there's any cataloging freeze and as we move forward with the resolution. Okay, any questions so far? So we've covered the background of the project, the trends that haven't worked right, and then what we're doing right now with Cersei.
Did they give you any time to install?
No, the question for those online was the time estimate. I think it's going to depend on when they can get the reports ready and then when we can review them thoroughly enough to be satisfied to proceed with the next step. So this project, it will remain a priority, but I don't have hard and fast dates at this point. Yeah. Okay, how about any other questions? Okay, is there anything online, Rhonda?
No.
Okay. Okay, so before we look at some examples that show those title and material type problems, I thought we could talk next about what you can do on your end. So one thing we just mentioned, so make sure any staff who are affected by this, whether they're in public services, whether they're cataloging, making sure everybody is signed up for the RSA listserv. So I just wanted to show you again from our RSA homepage. If I click my house to go back, now we have on the left-hand navigation menu RSA membership, and then we have the listserv and Gmail info from the left. This actually is a topic that I wanted to bring up, and it kind of works well to mention it here. Kendall is in the process of transitioning us to a new listserv called MailChimp. It has a lot more options in its formatting. We can mark messages as high priority, lower priority. We can track the read rates and the open rates from our end. So if you're already subscribed to the RSA listserv, you don't have to do anything. Kendall's already moved you to the new listserv. Right now, though, we're actually using both listservs, so you're still subscribed in both places. But this link here on the sign-up page, this is for the new mailing list, and then what Kendall does is if he sees that you subscribe to the new MailChimp listserv, he then subscribes you on his end to the old listserv so that you're seeing messages in both places. So just be assured if you sign up here or if you ask a colleague to sign up here that they'll be subscribed to both the old and the new list. So that's the first thing to do. If you're noticing, a lot like several of you in the room have, if you're noticing problematic merges in your collection, if it doesn't take too much of your time, I would start a list, because once the resolution processing runs, we want to make sure that you can go back to those items that you've come across and make sure that they're corrected. So as long as, like I said, it's not going to cut too much time into your workflow. I know a lot of you here at the larger libraries probably need to keep things moving through as best as you can, but if you can start to make a list. If you think items on the list don't have problems with them that don't stem from the title or the material type, I know Normal Public this morning mentioned there might be a couple things that might not fit the trend of the title or the material type problems. If you're seeing things like that and you're not sure, you can send them to me and I'll take a look. Because we want to make sure the problems are fitting these two trends with the title and the material type. Everything I've seen so far has, and some of these things we'll look at, so it'll make more sense here in a little bit. The third thing you can do is if the problematic merge, if it's causing an immediate problem with circulation or with holds, you can import the record that you need on your end and move your item. Or if it's just too complex, I'll clean it up, but it's on a sparingly basis. I will do that because it does take time, especially now with the focus needing to be on cataloging requests. We're going to try and leave some of these merges that were wrong as is because we want the resolution to catch them. But if you're noticing something that, for example, and this happened at the Quincy Public Library, someone put a hold on it and they got it and it was wrong. They cleaned it up, and that's right to do that. But if you're just noticing things and it's not causing an immediate problem with circulation or a hold, try to leave it, because remember the point of the resolution is to correct these things on a larger scale. So does that part make sense? Yes, it doesn't feel right to say we get cataloged wrong, but at this point I don't want anyone in the room to feel like you have to start trying to clean up things in your collection that there could be hundreds of them. So I don't want anyone to feel like you need to start going through and trying to redo everything, because remember, that's what the point of this processing is supposed to do. Okay, so any questions about that piece? Okay. And I feel like I can't say this enough, but we know this is a problem with everybody in the library and with your patrons. I know initially there was some concern that this was just a cataloger problem, but no, it's really everybody that uses your library. So I don't want you to think that we think this is a back-end problem that can just kind of slip through the cracks. No, we know that this is a problem with everybody using the library. Okay, so I think what we'll do, let me log into Workflows twice, because I'd like to show you, we have an internal server that has our data archived from before the dedupe. And then we also have, of course, the live database that you use every day for your circulation and your cataloging. So let me log in twice, and I'm going to try not to confuse these. So we'll get this fired up, and then we can take a look at some of these examples. Have there been any questions online, Rhonda? I know you asked. No. Okay. Thank you. I always like to use certain colors when I have multiple workflows open. That helps me distinguish one versus the other, so I think I'll use that approach here. Now this internal pre-dedupe workflows, we just access this from our end. So if you're trying to get to this from your end, it won't work. Mostly we want the data in this database to be preserved. We don't want anything in here changed because if it is, that really ruins the integrity of having this database. So let me see here. I might need to run and go get the IP for it because I don't think we've used it on this computer. Oh, you know what? I can get to it from here. Let's see here. Yeah, this will work. Okay, so it's a really weird number. Let's see. And then when this one opens, I'm going to change the color on it. That way I don't accidentally confuse the two. Okay, this is supposedly pink. It looks more red, but that's okay. Okay, so I thought what we would do is, keeping those two trends in mind of what didn't work right, title matching, material type. Let's look at some examples to have this make more sense. So remember, pink is our pre-dedupe server. So let's just open up our search and display, and we're going to look for a record where it had a title discrepancy, and it had to do with subfield N that had volume. Again, this is what wasn't clear enough, because in the validation settings, it said all subfields for 245 were supposed to be considered. But it was only looking at the 245A when it was looking at title matches. So this one will be a good example of how the subfield N with the volume wasn't considered like it was supposed to be. Okay, so I'm going to type in OCLC title control numbers. That's really the best way to find these. Okay, so I'm going to open this record up. Okay, so this is Stan Lee presents The Amazing Spider-Man. Notice on the bibliographic tab in the 245, it has Stan Lee presents The Amazing Spider-Man. There's no volume number. This is basically the comprehensive record for volumes 1 and 2 shown up here. So if I go back to my purple workflows, that's our live one. Let's go to search and display. We'll change our index again to title control number. And let's do a search for the record that the dedupe thought matched based on the title, 245A, so it merged those items from the pink database into this one. Okay, so let's blow this one up, get it bigger. So notice here on the 245, it is Stan Lee presents The Amazing Spider-Man. That part matches in subfield A, but this is volume 2. This volume 2 piece is what was supposed to have been considered. So this is a good example of how title was matching, but it wasn't considering these additional subfields. This is what Cersei Dynex knows needs to be made right, is it has to be an exact match. It can't have it on one record and not the other and still merge them. So what we've done is told Cersei Dynex, if it doesn't have volume 2, leave it alone. This part, I admit, it could have been clearer from their end. I probably should have known to ask, but being so new to this type of project, I thought when title matched, that meant it had to be either there or not there on one record and not there on another. So I feel like it was a disconnect, but like I said, Cersei Dynex knows about this problem with the 245, the additional subfields, not being fully considered like they should have been. So this one is an example of how basically additional subfields in the title weren't considered like they should have been. So does this one make sense? I know it does not, it doesn't make it any better, but at least you can see why they merged and what needs to be done now so that this can be undone with the title more stringently considered. Does this make sense? Okay. I have another one that's similar, but it has a disc number, and I know several of you have seen things that have merged where you used to be attached to a record for a DVD where it described a season and you had several discs attached to it with one barcode. Again, same problem, where the title might have had a disc number in it, it merged them anyway. So let's take a look first at the record in the pre-dedupe database, so you can see what it initially was. Okay, so we'll open that one and then we'll go to the bibliographic tab. Notice it's Indian Summers, and then right here the complete season disc 2. So there's that subfield N again. Go back to the live. We'll do another search. It's similar to the one that we just looked at with the volume. Okay. So here's the complete second season again. This one, remember, from the pre-dedupe, it was just disc 2. So again, this is where title was not stringently considered in all subfields like it should have been. Not that it makes it better, but does that make sense what happened here? Okay. The same is also true if there was a subfield P with a part. I know the two examples I showed you had a subfield N with a number, but the subfields B for the subtitle, N for the number, and P for the part, those are the ones that we've identified to Cersei Dynex need to be more stringently considered. Okay, so any questions about either of those two examples before we look at the material type? Because remember, material type was the other piece where it wasn't tight enough for the matching.
So people are aware some records have actually disappeared.
That's correct, because
some items are not searchable, are no longer searchable.
That's right. For those online, Jeannie at Normal said, just to be sure everyone understands that records are no longer in the database that were there, and then that prevents accessibility both in workflows and the RSA CAT. That's right, because the record that was in the pink database, it's gone. And depending on the difference in the title in subfield N or P or B, it might be very difficult to find now because of the record it's attached to.
Because its record is gone.
Correct, because the record it was on is gone. But again, the point of this resolution processing is for Cersei Dynex to identify titles like these two that I've shown you where it had subfields N, P, or B, and it merged them. That's the point of the processing, for them to return me a list of those, and that's the part that would be reversed. We don't want to undo the OCLC title control number piece, because remember, that piece worked well. But this part with the title, that N, B, and P, that's what CERC is using to retrieve those records, a lot like these two, where the record it merged into matched based on the subfield A, the first part. It might have had N and P, but part of it was missing. It wasn't exactly matching, which is what we assumed match meant, is that both of them had to have it or both of them didn't. We didn't think if one didn't have it and the other did, we didn't think that would merge. To us, that just didn't even occur to us, because to us match meant exact match. Is anybody's head's going to explode yet? Are you still following me? Okay. Okay, good. So let's look at that next trend. Like I said, that didn't work. So we've done the title, so let's look at the material type. So the record in the pre-dedupe I wanted to show you is a Quincy record, and for their title control numbers from their standalone database, they didn't use the lowercase o like we did, and that's okay. We'll actually do a process here to fix that in our database if there's any of those left over, but that's why the title control number here looks different. Okay, so notice it's a spring bouquet. So this material type, it's a combination of coding from the fixed fields up here at the top of the record. So notice this reproduction is blank, meaning it's a regular print record. This one doesn't have an 007 field. You'll see when we look at the record it merged into, actually not with this example, it doesn't have an 007, but the material type, the next example we'll look at, it has an 007, so it's typically a combination of this reproduction field and then if there's an 007 with some additional coding. This one though, since it's just a regular print book, those don't have the 007 field. The next example though we'll look at will have that. So just remember that this is blank, it's a regular print record, and it had 478 pages, so just remember that. So back in the live database, the purple one, let's do a different search so we can see the record it moved into. Okay, so this one again, it matches based on the title. It's a spring bouquet. Notice this reproduction that's considered for the material type, it's a D. Does anyone know what the D means? It's a large print, yeah. So again, when we set this up, we said material type needed to match. I didn't think that meant if it didn't have it on one record, but it did on the other, and the title matched, that they'd merge them. To me, that's not a match if one has it and one doesn't. And notice here, and this is the part too that is troublesome too, when we were considering material type, our table for matching, it was supposed to look at the page numbers. If you remember, that other one was 478 pages with a different publisher. This has a different publisher and different pages. So I feel like the additional settings in that criteria, it's like it saw the title matched and then it just merged them. It didn't look at my settings for the publisher and the page numbers. So this is an example, again, not that it makes it better, but this is hopefully an example that can help you see how the material type in this reproduction field, it wasn't considered like we thought when we were told match. Okay, so any questions about this example? Okay, how about online? Is there anything? Okay. Everyone's thinking, oh my gosh, our database is a mess. We'll get it right again. Okay, so this last example I wanted to show you, it's material type again, and it has the reproduction fixed field value, but it also has that 007 field I was mentioning that can play into this material type. And this one has to do with microfilm and print, which I know several of you, I know Kathleen at Peoria Public made a good list of things that had this problem. I know Monica at Fond du Lac, you reported a National Geographic where, well, that actually was a title problem now that I think about it, but there's been several of you that have noticed these print and microfilm problems, so I wanted to show an example so that you can see how this stems, again, from material type. So I'm back in the pre-dedupe database, and I'm pulling up a record that we had before the dedupe, of course. And this one, I think, was microfilm. Let's see. Yeah. So I'm going to open that one. So notice up here, it's in a different spot, but there is a reproduction value. This is an A, meaning microfilm, microform. This one has that 007 field I was mentioning. Again, this coding, it's for a lot of details about the microform and its format, but it basically means it's microform. So remembering that it has an A right here and it has a fixed field indicating it's microform, just like the title down here says, and then mostly though, remember the reproduction. So that record, again, Cersei saw that it matched based on the title in the 245A, and it didn't look further to see that the material types did not match. Okay, so here's the journal star in the live database. So notice the reproduction is blank, just like for that large print book. If it's blank, it means it's regular print. Notice it doesn't have an 007, because remember, for regular print materials, you don't put an 007 field. It's just for non-print. So again, the dedupe saw it matched based on the 245 subfield A. The rest of the criteria where it was supposed to make sure reproduction, i.e. material type, as well as publisher year, a lot of the additional core match points, it's like because the title matched, it basically threw everything else out the window and merged them. Again, not like it's making this right, but does that at least make sense how the reproduction and then also the 007 are part of this material type problem that also needs to be reanalyzed by Cersei and then a report sent so that we can verify these large print and microfilm. It also affected some DVDs and Blu-rays. We can make sure that the material type is more stringently considered. So any questions about the material type discrepancies involving large print, microfilm? I know I didn't show you one, but DVD or Blu-ray. Okay, one thing I wanted to mention, and this actually, it was reported here by Wendy in our room right here, because she also works at Lakin. This is why I'm encouraging you to keep a list of things that you notice have merged wrong. She reported an example of a Blu-ray and a DVD mix-up where it was a dedupe problem. Our data in our database, it wasn't correct in the 007 field. So there's things where the data might not have been correct in our database. These things I just showed you, it definitely was a dedupe matching problem, but there could be a case here and there where there could have been a coding problem on the record that wouldn't have prevented the merge. So that's why I'm encouraging you, if you see things, and it won't take too much time to make a list, and then especially after the dedupe is done, if you're noticing these things still aren't resolved, I'd like to see those because there could be problems with the original data. So that's the other piece I wanted to mention. I'm hoping that's not widespread. I think our data is good data. We get all of our records from OCLC except in those few cases of e-content for a couple members. So We're basically relying on good data, and I think we have it, but you know how it is in OCLC. Sometimes the record isn't very good to start with, and if that was brought into the database, there's always a chance, like what Wendy reported, that if the data wasn't good to begin with, the merge would have happened because the data wasn't there clear enough to stop it. So does that part make sense? And that actually, I admit, was my biggest anxiety when I approached his name's Tracy Moyers at the CERC conference, was he's just going to tell me, well, you have bad data in your database. You know, we had to work with what you had. He didn't say that, and I'm glad, because I think most of these problems were cases of our definition of match and theirs not lining up like they should have, and not bad data. I think bad data is just here and there. But like I said, if you see it, especially after the resolution processing happens, I want to know about it, because I think there might be a problem with the original data if it's still not fixed. Okay, so I think that actually wraps up the dedupe discussion. So remember, stay tuned to the listserv. That's your best next step. And then remember, if it's not taking too much time, keeping a list of things you're noticing that are wrong. But remember, don't feel like you have to dig deep in your collection trying to find them, because these title and material type problems, that is what's wrong. But if you're seeing things like what normal you mentioned, if you see things that maybe don't fit a title or a material type discrepancy, send them over. Okay, so any questions before we leave this topic? How about online? Any questions?
Hey, just thanks for good examples being offered.
You're welcome. I think examples are the best way in cataloging to understand really anything. So I think examples do help drive the point home, and I appreciate your compliments. Okay. Well, how about we take a short break? I know I need to use the restroom, so why don't we reconvene at 10:30, and then we'll have about an hour before Roxy joins us to show us the first part of the fair workshop. So let's reconvene at 10:30.
Thank you.
Really? Wow. It's just that worth it. Some reason cold water and like, yeah. Weird. I don't know if there's some kind of reaction or like. I like that. You didn't go to that. No problem. Not with anything I eat regularly, I know that for sure, but like, yeah, definitely. Well, I did eat my nuts and I was good.
Almost there. It's like a tiki time bomb. Very long. Okay, there we go. Okay. Yes, let us know online if you can hear, and then we'll go ahead and dive back into the agenda. Let me get that back open. Okay, good. Sounds like everybody can hear. Okay. So I wanted to share an update on Blue Cloud Visibility, that project we participated in and we're still participating in, that we started, I think it was about a year ago. And then we'll talk about, too, it ties in well with highlights from the CERC Dynex conference. So with Blue Cloud Visibility, we're still in the process of refining it to get it working. So I wanted to share with you first, and this is posted under the documents on the database committee page. Kendall has worked with CERC Dynex for all of you to reconfigure your linked data link that used to be up here in the URL line. It used to be very consortia-centric. It used to have RSA in it. It didn't have, for example, Morton PLD in it. So Kendall has worked with CERC for each of your libraries to come up with this more specific linking structure for your library's visibility. I call it the landing page for your linked data. And what Kendall did in order to get these links, he used your library's RSA cat library name. So I thought I'd show from our RSA cat information page. Maybe. There we go. Okay, so each of you, remember, has a link for the RSA cat that you have embedded in your website, possibly other places. So if I open up Morton Public link, and this is what I know is probably easier to get to from their homepage, but notice it has this Morton PLD at the end of it. That played in to redesigning their linked data link. So each of you right now has a link that's been renamed with your RSA cat. I don't really call it a code, but your RSA cat term, I guess, for your library. It's been reworked here into your link. And the purpose of doing this is to have your library, CERC Dynex calls it having a more library-centric linked data profile. So the purpose is to have your data indexed by search engines like Google, Bing, or Yahoo, and those search engines would know that it's specific to your library versus trying to pull up linked data results at that old link that was RSA-wide. So that's the first step of this. For those libraries, though, that have your own domain, so if you own your website, you maintain it. Morton Public is a good example. Normal Public, Peoria Public, Fond du Lac. A lot of you have websites with webmasters that you own and maintain. The next step, and this is the part that's in progress, Kendall's working with CERC to figure out the procedure that your webmaster on site would use so that you can associate this linked data link with your existing website. So Morton's website, I think, is mortonlibrary.org. So their link would change to mortonlibrary.library.link. So it would make it more consistent with your library's existing website. And again, that gives you more leverage for this link data linking and then the search engine finding your results. It's basically using your existing footprint on the web through your website, associating your link data profile with it. But again, that's only if you own your own website domain. If you don't, no problem. This link will stay the same. Yes, it won't be associated with an existing web presence that you have, but it still should be able to be indexed and searchable. Rhonda, yep?
Beth from Lillian Evans Library says everyone should probably check their link because their library does not have one yet.
Okay. It sounds like there might be some links that maybe weren't set up correctly or were inadvertently skipped. Beth at William Evans, it sounds like her library might have been skipped. So what I would recommend doing is check your library's catalog homepage. I'm thinking you have the RSA cap probably bookmarked on your website, but remember it's a link that'll have this ALSI SCP, and notice it has at the end of it that library term. I don't really want to call it a code. So taking that library term right there and seeing if you can use that in a .library.link URL to see if it works. And it sounds like that's the piece for Beth that wasn't set up. If you come across that, please let Kendall know, because I know he did submit a spreadsheet to Cersei Dynex of these terms, but like I said, some might have slipped through the cracks. Any questions at this point? This page is ugly. I know a patron will not want to use this, but it is neat to see, though, how your bibliographic data, these are FRBR, functional requirement for bibliographic records, how it's been molded into BibFrame, which is the library link data version, how it's taking those concepts, and all of these numbers attached are different bits and pieces from your bib records that Visibility is harvested, and they've linked using those, like I said, at root, they're Ferber, FRBR concepts, but they've been twisted and turned into this linked data structure for libraries called BibFrame. The part I wanted to mention, I know Martha and he probably felt like we were picking on him yesterday, but Martha and I are still disappointed because when we're doing searches in Google, you're still not finding your results. Now, in all fairness, these new library-centric links, they're still new. They've only been set up, I think, a couple months, and for people like William Evans, unfortunately, they're not set up yet. But it takes search engines time to crawl these links, to notice your data. They don't have the longevity that your existing website has, that other websites have. So these links are still in their infancy and need to be crawled and made visible to search engines. But I guess we want results sooner rather than later, Martha and I. So we were telling Kendall, you know, that these links really need to start doing the trick, because if your results aren't visible in the Google search, it really to us is just a mechanism that, yeah, it's nice to have, but to us, we want more potential out of this. With that in mind, though, I did want to show you, and this goes back to the Cersei Dynex conference. I admit that I'm very tunnel visioned on wanting your library results to come up when somebody does a Google search, and that's actually just part of it, and that's what the Cersei conference helped me realize is, yes, you want this data visible in Google results, but you also want this data so that it can be interoperable with the web in other ways. And so this is what they talked about at the conference, and there's a couple slides here with sneak previews from their Cersei Dynex presentation. So we're looking at things like this, like for the Cuyahoga County Library System, where they have a New York Times bestseller list. They call this a living list because as you add content to your collection and it's harvested for Blue Cloud Visibility, the living list that's set up as part of your visibility, it knows which of these titles you've put in your collection, and it dynamically updates this list for you. This list is neat because you can embed it in a blog, in your website, in your library's Facebook page. So this is also too part of the potential of linked data. This, like it suggests, is a sneak preview, so this isn't available yet, but this functionality to embed and to make these living lists with dynamically updating content, whether it's New York Times or whether it's new items in your collection, that's the potential too of this linked data. So yes, it's unfortunate that our links are still so new and they're not being completely crawled yet to be visible when you're searching from Google. But there's also the features like this that are coming down the road that Cersei's developing with Saphira, the linked data company, that will make your data not just visible in search results, but more interoperable and really put your data out where patrons are too, not just in search engines, but in things like your blog and your Facebook. So keeping this feature in mind, I did want to show you, if I go back to our committee page, one of these messes of links. Okay, let me start fresh again. I've got too many tabs open. Okay. We did have an example we wanted to show you of how this linked data is looking for what a patron would see. So what I showed you is that linked data landing page. I know a patron is not going to look at that, and they're unlikely to come across it because they're not going to type in the library term .library.link. But when results are more not harvested, but when they've been crawled and the content is more visible, this is what you're going to see from those search results. Once we get to the point where Google and Bing and Yahoo have had more time to index your new library-centric link, this is what's going to show up in those results. So it's going to show a cover image if one's available. It's going to have basic description about the item. This one's for Peoria Public, so it tells me it's the main branch. It has a map down here. Notice this Borrow It button. If I click that, it launches into the Peoria Public Library's RSA CAT. So this is what we're working towards. But again, we need time because remember, new links are hard for search engines to index. There's millions of pages out there. So we're going to be patient and give our links more time to get settled into the web and to be visible to those search engines. But this is what we're trying to move towards, is this seamless clicking, getting the linked data result and clicking the Borrow It, and then being launched into the catalog. This part is still to be determined, but there is some configuration that can be done of this type of page. I know at this point Kendall isn't saying anything about training, but I really think it would be to our advantage if you're a full online library, or especially a larger library, that some of this you could be able to control. But I do know some of this will provide by default. But I know the conference, they showed a lot of customizations on this page where there was information about how to get a library card, a link to the library's calendar. So I know this page can be customized, but those details on our end about who could customize this a bit more than what we do by default, that's still to be determined. But there's a lot of potential even on this landing page, where if a patron doesn't necessarily want to check out the item, they might click on another link that takes them to your library's website. Okay, so I unfortunately don't have too much else to show you at this point, since those library-centric links, like I said, are still very fresh, so they're not returning Google search results. But mostly I wanted to put the bug in your ear that we are working towards this more detailed display. And then staying tuned if you're one of those libraries that owns your domain that your website is hosted on. and you can edit on your end. Staying tuned because Kendall is working with instructions with Cersei Dynex to try and make this linking structure up here even more specific, tying to your library's website. So a lot is in flux, but just remember right now your library specific link should be set up. It's worth checking, like Beth at Lillian Evans mentioned, and just remembering that we're giving Google and Bing and Yahoo time to start crawling those new library-centric links. Do you have any questions? Okay. So keep using full OCLC records because remember that rich data is what makes the link data conversion work with those different concepts that we saw linked on your landing page. If it's a brief record, it won't give us very good linking concepts. Okay, so this transitions well into a few highlights from the Cersei Dynex conference. I don't think I'll show the video, but I did want to show you where it's posted. I think after the conference last year, we mentioned that there was a video that Cersei Dynex created about the importance of libraries. They actually did another video. It's similar, but this one is actually less of a Cersei Dynex commercial. It's more just really applicable to any library that's trying to show its importance in the community. So this video is linked here. It's about 2 minutes. It's worth checking out, and I know too some of our libraries have posted it on their web page. So you're welcome to use this on your web page or show it to your team or to show it to your director to possibly show to the board. They at Cersei Dynex want this widely used, and it's even been translated, they said, into other foreign languages. So they were really proud of this video during the opening session at the conference. They said 130 new libraries joined Cersei Dynex, thankfully not RSA. They joined Cersei Dynex in 2016. I thought it was interesting that Disney Animation Studios was one of Cersei Dynex's new clients. So I thought that was just interesting. They're not just public, school, and academic libraries. They really have all types of libraries. I don't know when we're doing this update, but I wanted to mention because I know several of you in the room and online, you use Blue Cloud Analytics to run reports. I mentioned that there's going to be an update coming in the coming months for Blue Cloud Analytics that takes away the requirement that it has to use the Adobe Flash Player. And that's a great requirement to let go because when you don't need to use Flash, that means you can use Blue Cloud Analytics on a tablet or a smartphone. So just keep that in mind as we do updates here. I don't have a timeline, but there will be an update coming for analytics where if you want to use it on your smartphone or your tablet, it'll be easier to do so than now, where it's so Flash dependent. Okay, before I get into some details about Blue Cloud cataloging, there was a session, and I think actually this was presented by a Cersei Dynex employee that helped RSA with our migration, I think 8 or 9 years ago. But he now is the Symphony product manager. There actually weren't many upcoming enhancements for cataloging in workflows. They call workflows Symphony too. But he talked mostly in his session about upcoming circulation enhancements and also more technical enhancements. With cataloging in workflows, they do know they need to update the MARC maps to accommodate recent changes to RDA, but there actually wasn't too much mentioned in terms of enhancing or adding additional cataloging features to workflows. I think that that's somewhat predictable because they're trying to transition more of their development team to working on that new Blue Cloud platform that analytics is on, and they're also developing cataloging and circulation modules. So they haven't abandoned workflows, but I can tell the focus is definitely on Blue Cloud and that the products on that platform. They of course reassure us that workflows is not going away, but the development focus is, like I said, it's clear that it's on Blue Cloud. So a few things about Blue Cloud cataloging. They said over 400 customers are using it. I still don't think it's ready for us. You can add and edit items and call numbers. You can delete items, but only if you're the last one attached, because it removes the entire record. That's about it for the functionality. So they're more promoting it as a copy cataloging interface and doing maintenance. There were actually a couple sessions by Cersei Dynex customers where they talked about using it to enhance subject headings and call numbers. So not doing new cataloging in it, basically just doing edits. And there was another session, and this made me a little bit nervous, but it was a school district library system, and they trained parent volunteers how to catalog in the new Blue Cloud interface, which I thought was not a good idea, but it worked well in their case. So there are customers using it, but I don't think it's for us yet, because a lot of the functionality that you use in workflows and is an important part of your cataloging process, it's not there yet. There's no report to load OCLC records. There's no item group editor to make batch edits. You can't delete, like I mentioned, just an item. It deletes the whole record. It doesn't accommodate recent changes to RDA. There's no support for authority control. You can't have customized menus for your home location, item type, and item category codes, so you see all the codes in there, which I don't think you want to see because we have hundreds in our full list. And then you can't set defaults when you're cataloging. So if you had a batch of DVDs you were cataloging, you couldn't adjust the item type and the home location to the default. So I don't think it's ready yet. I think there's promise, but I do think, though, it probably won't be until 2019 at this point that we consider using it. They mentioned during the session that in 2018, they're focusing more development on Blue Cloud circulation, which Martha might tell you more about during her meeting. So I think that they're almost like they're starting development on these different pieces of the Blue Cloud platform, but they're not fully finishing something, or at least moving it further along before they start the next piece. Because I feel like what I listed here as being missing in cataloging, those are significant features. I mean, you have to be able to delete and set defaults and have customized menu lists. So I think that they'll pick it back up again, but I know for 2018 they said their focus is developing Blue Cloud circulation. So that probably wasn't the most positive GoSuzy report, but I do think, though, we made a good connection with the deduplication supervisor. I think that really seeing the direction with Blue Cloud Visibility was encouraging. Hearing, too, about the analytics updates, and then also there's a couple new products, a mobile app, and then this digital academy with e-content. There were a couple brand new products Cersei was talking about. So it was a good conference, but you can tell I was just discouraged that Blue Cloud isn't moving further along. Any questions at this point? Okay. So let's switch gears. I'm going to go back to the agenda, and I'm going to ask Karen Doris from Normal Public Library. She and her colleague Julia found an interesting problem with uniform title searching and workflows, so I thought let's take a look at that. But I'll get the agenda back up here so you can see where we are for those online. Went right past it. Okay. Okay, so we're moving to number 4. Okay. And then here's the workflows. I'll let you come to the front and show how it isn't working just yet. Hey, Roxy, good morning.
Okay, so what I found was I cataloged a Spanish edition of Muncha 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 by Candace Fleming, and I always, when I import a record from OCLC, I always check title to make sure it's going to come up. And this one would not come up by muncha. So do you want me to bring that up on the?
That'd be great.
Okay, let's see.
I know I probably got it all.
Oh, you got it. That's okay. Let's see here. So I'm going to do a title search, and I might just go ahead and put, should I do NP?
Yeah, why don't you? That way you can do it just like you did it on your end when you first found it.
So the only one that's going to come up, or that should come up, that did come up, was,
You're on the browse.
that's okay, is the English edition of it. And the Spanish.
Let's go to the bibliographic, yeah.
Okay. In fact, it's kind of funny because ours isn't coming up either.
Let's go back. Let's see if we can expand. I feel like it's really shrunk in here. Yeah, see if you can drag that down. Okay, yeah.
Well, see, now the Spanish one did come up.
Because you're on a browse. So it'll put it alphabetically.
Let me do an exact.
I know the keyword doesn't work. That's what we discovered yesterday. Do you remember if it was keyword?
See, it is coming up now.
Well, we made a change yesterday afternoon with our vendor.
Try the keyword because that's what ours is typically on.
The keyword, is not working just yet.
But the Spanish did come up on this, and it hadn't.
It hadn't before.
Right. So maybe it got fixed then.
I know yesterday we readjusted the search indices, and we did make some changes to them. I was told that this record needed to be edited so that it would be re-indexed and the changes pushed through to it. So I'm a little bit surprised that the changes we made yesterday have already taken effect, which is great if it did, because that was basically invisible before.
Correct.
But we do still, I think, need to do our deep indexing like we were planning this weekend. But you're right, when I actually did the same thing after Julia reported the problem, and when you did muncha, it didn't pull up, is it nom nom nom? It did not pull that up at first. It only pulled up the records where it had muncha in the 245, the primary title. But like I said, we did with our vendor yesterday make some changes for both the keyword and the browse index. And then we also, indexed, I think this one has a 240 field. Let's go back to the bib record, if I remember right. Let's open it up. We'll go to detailed display. I might be getting it confused. Okay, yeah, notice how this one, it has a 240 with muncha. It has that uniform title, the Spanish version. That uniform title, you've probably seen too how it can also be in the 130. It depends on what's the primary access point in the record. So we yesterday worked with Cersei 9X to index both the 240 and the 130 because the uniform title could be in either field. I'm just surprised though it already seems to have taken effect. I was told it had to be edited and then indexed tonight. So I'm a little bit surprised, but that's a good thing though. Yeah, and I'm glad that you found it. And the other piece though we need to do is, like I've been mentioning, we need to do deep indexing because the deep indexing is the only way to ensure that existing records that have these uniform titles are completely indexed. This one makes it look like it is, but the deep indexing is what Cersei 9X recommends for making sure that the searching is fully configurable. Yeah, I think we're in good shape. Thank you.
Sure.
You probably thought that was easier than I thought.
There was.
The other detail I wanted to mention, when James runs this rebuild process, we're targeting this Monday night because we know Monday will be a slow day with most of you closed for Memorial Day. There might be reports and workflows that are delayed the next morning, so they won't stop running, but because this rebuild process takes up reporting time, it might push back some of the morning reports, or if you try and load records into workflows Tuesday morning. So things might be delayed. I know James is working with Wendy to keep an eye on that, so if there's a problem with a delay in reports, I think, Wendy, do you plan to post to the listserv? Okay, thank you. That way everybody will stay informed if things are running late. Nothing should stop running, but again, it's just this rebuild process that takes up some of the reporting juice. So some of the normal reports that run on mornings might be a little bit delayed. It's tricky, actually, to find uniform titles like this one where it's different from the 245. So this actually was a good example to find how it wasn't fully configured. A lot of times the uniform titles are similar, so you wouldn't have known it wasn't set up right. Yeah, okay. The other item, going back here to the agenda, under the basic workflow cataloging, we had some discussion at the February users group meeting about the annual serial records project. We had some good feedback on that, and it's changed the direction of this project. So I wanted to give you an update, what we're thinking with these annual records. I revised the handout, so for those in the room, I have the paper copy, and then online I'll show you where it's posted. Do you, Miranda, want to hand this out for me? Thank you. So for those online, thank you. I need to shut some of these again. Too confused. Okay. So for those online, it's under workflows, documentation, and training. It's under cataloging. And it's under guides and how-tos. Oh, plenty left over. Thank you. Okay. So I put it right here at the bottom. I admit these aren't in the best order, but it's a proposal for rethinking serial cataloging practices. So much of the handout is the same, but I wanted to mention that there was a recommendation from the users group discussion that we try and start this project in 2018 in the new year. That way there's not confusion on your end about using 2017 versus 2018 records. Remember, the purpose of this is so that you can catalog weekly magazines as well as other magazines that have lots of issues attached to them, using them on annual records rather than using this comprehensive record where there's so many issues. So we're trying to move towards these separate records per year rather than one big record that has so many issues it's nearly difficult to search, and it's difficult too now that you're trying to attach call numbers or issues to it. So some of the examples, remember, that have been reported are People, Newsweek, Consumer Reports, things with lots of issues. But just like it mentions on the first page here, the change is starting with 2018. At first we talked about 2017, but I think 2018 is a more realistic goal. And with our reshifting of things internally, if we need to push it back again, we will. We won't abandon it, but we'll just kind of see how things go in the coming months. But I think trying to start with this project in a new year is probably a good idea rather than trying to start at mid-year when that could really cause a lot of confusion with not just cataloging, but your public services and your patrons too. So remember, once annual records are created, we'll close the previous year that record and ask you not to use it anymore. Unfortunately, there's no way we can prevent you from using it. We asked CIRC Dynex if we could lock a record to prevent more holdings being attached to it, but they said no, so we'll just have to keep an eye on, once we start this, keep an eye on magazines being cataloged on the correct year. If a serial title changes, though, we would make a new record. We wouldn't try and keep using the same record. Mostly though, remember, even though this project, it seems like keeps being delayed, we do know how much of a pain it is trying to do that complex workaround in call number and item maintenance to add your call numbers, your holdings for these. We know that it's a problem ever since we did that upgrade in December 2015. I know there's a few of you in the room that use the serial module. Luckily, that still works well. You don't have trouble in there, but for the maintenance wizard that the majority of you are using for magazine cataloging, it's just not working like it should. Okay, I know we've looked at the example before, the Newsweek, where it has the 2017. I think I'll just do that again real quickly to help refresh your memory. I just did a quick periodical title search. So notice on the bibliographic screen, we have a date 1 here for 2017. And that controls how the date looks in the result list in workflows. So we wanted to be sure and put 2017 here, so when you search workflows, you can see it in that publication date column. But then notice further down in the record, we put it after the title. And that'll be your clue, is to look after the title to find these. I know during the dedupe, of course, things got moved on here that probably shouldn't have, so there might be more, there's more issues attached, but we didn't intend this record to be used, so if you're seeing your library's holdings on here, don't panic, because it's probably a problem with the title again, like we talked about earlier, but this was intended just to be an example record. Okay, oops. Okay, this next steps part on the second page, and this I admit I haven't had a chance to revisit. We were initially saying 500 or more holdings, but actually I was spot checking some of the titles that are on our list here on the next page that we'd like to do this for. Some of them, like World Magazine, they just have 97 holdings attached to them. So I think we're going to need to possibly, when we start this, get some more feedback about records that are locking up for you when you're trying to catalog on them. Because some of these with 97 holdings, that really shouldn't be freezing up if you're trying to use it. It's things like time and people that, I know Time, for example, has over 4,000 holdings attached to it. So this limit here may need to be revisited since we have some magazines on the list that really don't have that many holdings attached to them. So that's to be continued, but of course, once we have the finalized list, we will share it with you, because I know this needs to be shared with public services staff who help patrons. So we would not just change the list and then not tell you. That would not be helpful at all. We talked about trying to shoot for 2018, but we'll see how things go internally towards getting this off the ground. I know we've mentioned this detail before, but it wouldn't hurt to mention again that, remember, we won't transfer previous years of serials onto annual records, so it would just be from that point forward. I know there was interest during the February users group for doing this for a lot more serial titles, so that's something that we'll need to consider once we have an idea how time intensive this project is, just for a select subset of serial records, but I know there was interest for doing this for a lot more serial. The other piece I wanted to mention, the serial control piece is still to be determined as well. We had scheduled a meeting with the System-Wide Area Network, SWAN, the consortium that used to be in the Burr Ridge office of Rail. Now they're in a separate office, but they actually have a lot going on because they're merging Magic and Link into their consortium. So we've put that meeting on the back burner, but I know they'll be the ones that can really advise us with the serial control piece of how this will work, because they use these annual records and quite a few of their libraries use serial control. So that piece is to be determined, but I wanted to reassure you we haven't forgotten about it either.
Can I ask, how many
Mhm.
libraries use the serial control in RSA? Do you like it?
I would say there's maybe a dozen. I know when it got started, I of course wasn't here, but I know Cersei Dynex did the training for the serial control module, and so that's how the libraries that use it got the training on it. We've never done training here on it. Yeah, I'm sorry for those online. Jeannie asked if from Normal if they like the serial control module and how many libraries use it. So I know we've never done training here, but I know there's libraries that you have processes in place and it works well. So we've kind of used a team approach for training if someone's interested in using it. It is restricted to the full online libraries. That's a detail worth mentioning. So if you're a basic online, the call number and item maintenance wizard is your method of cataloging these, but if you're a full online and you are thinking about serial control, we can put you in touch with some of the libraries using it. Yeah. Any other questions? So again, this is to be continued too. Trying for 2018, but we'll see how things go. Okay. Okay, I wanted to see if anyone who attended the April 25th RDA cataloging workshop, it was here at our office presented by Lynn Fields of Southern Illinois University. If anyone who attended that, either from my team or anybody else, if you had some highlights you wanted to share from that workshop, if you'd be willing to come to the front. It was a very comprehensive day.
I was just going to say that it was a really good workshop. Do we still have copies of the handouts?
I actually have some more, yeah. They sent me from Brew Ridge.
I was going to say, even if you weren't able to attend if you're not super familiar with RDA or you're not real comfortable with it yet, there were some really good examples, some exercises, thank you, that's the word I was looking for, that we worked on that day that were really helpful with sort of reinforcing some of the new fields in RDA and the differences between how cataloging was done before. So if you would like a copy of those, we have them.
Yes, I'll let you know.
Also, I don't generally catalog, I do a lot of cleanup in our database, but I found it helpful since now I'm taking on more cataloging requests, that it helped reinforce things I knew, but now actually get to put into practice. So I found it very helpful.
Anyone else? Thank you. Want to share tidbits from it? It was a good session. Unfortunately, Rails wasn't able to record it. They tend not to when it's somebody live. But the handouts were very good, and like Miranda said, there were several exercises that helped reinforce the content. I did revise just a couple things in they used to be called the tidy cataloging strategies. I actually renamed them the cataloging best practices. There were a couple revisions I made to this that I wanted to discuss today. They're not significant, and it's things you're already doing, but I wanted to have them more clearly documented in this document, especially after Lynn's workshop where she was talking about the importance of consortia documenting how they do things. So let's take a look at what was the tidy cataloging strategies. Now it's the cataloging best practices. Thank you. So for those online, this is posted on the Guides and How-Tos page for Workflows Cataloging. It should be right here up at the top. I try and put these somewhat in alphabetical order. Now that I say that, the serials one is out of order, but this cataloging best practices. Okay. So I renamed the title. Thank you. I think I might take one actually. I renamed the title because I thought best practices were more applicable than strategies. Most of this, though, is the same as when we've talked about this in previous meetings. Anything, though, that was added since the last revision in September 2016, and mostly I made these revisions actually this week, is in red. So let's see if we can get to something that's in red here. Okay, so notice here on page 5, again, this was something that I think we're all doing already, and Lynn mentioned it during the workshop. If there's multiple publication or copyright dates on your item, use the latest date when you're comparing your item to the record, ignoring reprint dates. So again, this is something that I think everybody is hopefully already doing, but I thought it could be clarified here since we are talking about already in these best practices the publication field. Notice on the next page, on page 6, we've gotten some questions about differences in playing time or running time between what's on the record and what's on your disk. Usually the case, but ideally you would pop it into the machine and see what the runtime is. But there's been some discrepancies between what's on the OCLC record and what's either on your item's case or the item itself. Internally, we went with a 10-minute difference because if it's longer than that, there's probably significant supplementary content on the disk. Maybe it's a special edition or some kind of anniversary edition. So we went with 10 minutes, but I'd like feedback, though, if 10 minutes you think is reasonable for a difference. If it's more than 10 minutes, we think it needs to be on a different record. Does that seem like a fair? Okay, I see some head shaking. How about online? Does that seem like a good number? I just felt like we needed to have it clarified because I know a few minutes different, it's probably close enough, but if it's more than that, we want to make sure it's on the best record. Okay, good. It looks like there's some yeses there. Okay. And I think this is the last thing I changed. So on page 7, the next page, and this actually was something I learned about at the Rails cataloging working group meeting earlier this month, that the 347 field, it's a new field in the resource description and access rules with the digital file characteristics. That field is starting to be used more instead of the 538 field. In that 347, like the 538, it indicates the Blu-ray or the DVD format. I'm thinking you're seeing this as you're using records already, but again, clarifying in here that it probably wouldn't hurt to check the 347 and the 538. The record might not have both of the fields, but if it does, checking them to make sure you're using the correct format of record. Okay. Other than that, it's all the same content, so split into best practices for call number item records and bibliographic records. Mostly in light of Lynn's presentation, it was just clarifying a few details. Does anyone have any questions? Okay. And we can always revise this too, I feel like, as the rules keep changing in RDA, or if we notice new details on the records, we can always change this as we need to. Okay, so our last item on here, and we're actually doing well on time, because remember Roxy's here, she'll join us at 11:30. I'll go ahead and share my usual report. Okay, so I think, Rhonda, do you want to hand this one out, or Miranda? Whoever. So This is posted on the database page. Thank you. So under the board committees, groups, and then the DB management committee. And then a lot of the resources, just like for other meetings, we've posted down here, like I mentioned at the beginning. So let's open the report. Okay, some of this might be redundant from the users group meeting earlier this month, but I thought I would give you an overview of the membership changes. Oh, plenty. Thank you. Bushnell Public Library, Prairie Creek Public Library District, and then Valley District Library, they're all currently unionless members. They're in some stage of cataloging. Valley is further along, and they're going to start circulating this summer. Martha just did some training there earlier this week. We have several new basic online members, so Knoxville Public Library, not far from Galesburg. They're nearly finished cataloging and will start circulating this summer. Neponset, Williamsfield, and Ransom Public Libraries, they're Rails automation system grant recipients, so they'll start cataloging either this summer. We're thinking Ransom probably later into the year. Quincy Public Library, of course, we're so glad they joined us. They're circulating and cataloging, of course, doing cleanup as they come across it. We're still working through several pieces of different procedures with them to get things working smoothly, but I think it's gone well, and I know their holds are really exploding there, so that's exciting. These are not official, but as you would probably expect with our state budget the way it is, a lot of schools have staffing and budget uncertainties, especially for the libraries. So we know at Henry Senachwine School District, oh, okay. There's
Not shaking my head.
There's no librarian.
Not about you guys.
Okay.
Just about them.
I know, I think Wendy visited at one point, and it didn't sound like there was a plan to hire a librarian there. They had a really good, engaged librarian before who retired, so there's possibility they might pull out. Roanoke Benson, you might remember Chuck Atterbury. He was on the RSA board as the school library representative. He's even worked too at East Peoria and Eureka school districts. They eliminated funding for the media specialist at Roanoke Benson, so now it's going to be an aide starting in the fall. So we don't know if they're going to pull out, but it just makes us nervous when the librarian goes that the district might not see the need for having someone qualified and then a system too to give their students and teachers what they need. So we'll see what happens. There's been several new home location and just one item type created since the January database meeting. The game one is worth considering because I think some of you might have games already cataloged in the database, things like board games, card games. You might be using a different item type like Realia. You might want to use game instead. It's a little bit more reflective of what the item actually is. So if you think you have some games in your database, Doug can always run you a report if you're not sure, or you can run it in analytics if you're comfortable doing that. But if you'd like to start using the game item type, James can help you get that set up. No changes to item categories 1, 2, or 3 codes. Plenty of new item cat 4 and 5, over 30 for each of them. So if you're interested in any of those and your menu's customized, please let Amanda know. She's glad to add it to your menu. Okay. So on the upcoming training and professional development, don't worry about the basic cataloging workshops. Those will probably need to cancel. So we won't be offering those over the summer, again, as we try and get our team up to speed and do cataloging requests and keep the focus on new members. So we probably won't be offering the workshops, but that's okay. I know in the summer there tends to be attendance dwindling at those because of summer reading and staff vacations. So these cataloging workshops, we're going to shoot for them again in the fall. So just stay tuned as we pick some dates. That's the bulk of what's on here, but I did want to mention this program on Tuesday, July 11th from 9:30 to 4:30. It's going to be hosted here at our office. It doesn't look like on the library learning calendar registration is open yet. They don't have the link publicly visible, but stay tuned to the Rails e-newsletter because they're working on the details of a Library of Congress subject headings workshop here. And Library of Congress subject headings are, of course, our preferred subject heading scheme. I know you use them heavily on OCLC records, wanting to pick records that have good controlled headings. So this workshop would really dive deeper into subject headings. So if that's of interest to you, just stay tuned to the e-news, and then once registration opens, I'll probably send a note to our listserv. Okay. Let's see, a couple details I wanted to mention that aren't on today's agenda, but they're quick hitters having to do with RSA. We're probably going to do a workflows upgrade over the summer. We don't have a date yet, but probably before school starts. So stay tuned to the listserv about an upgrade. We'll probably also do one again at the end of the year to catch another important update involving circ rule configuration, so there'll be updates coming. The other quick hitter I wanted to mention, Rails has, and this is posted on the Rails webpage, Rails has free exhibitor passes to the American Library Association conference at McCormick Place in Chicago. It's the last week of June. So if you're interested in going up to Chicago just to check out the ALA exhibits, Rails has free passes, and they can tell you on the website what to do to get one of those. It's neat because there's a lot of vendors there, and it's an easy either drive or train ride up there to go and to come back. So if you'd like to go check out the vendors at ALA, there's some free passes there. Okay, let's see here. The Rails staff retreat is Thursday, July 20th, so no RSA staff will be in the office. If there is an emergency that day, you can always call the help desk, not the help desk, the emergency after hours phone number. You can tell I'm programmed to say call the help desk. But on our home page here, it's in smaller font because we, again, don't want it called unless you can't connect to workflows or there's really a true RSA emergency. But there's this 309-369-6422 number. So if you have trouble with your workflows connecting on July 20th, that'd be the number to call since we'll be at a staff retreat. Okay. So just to finish up, the Cataloging Maintenance Center, of course, is still going strong. They recently revised their web page. If you haven't looked at it lately, they now put a 30-day turnaround time. They mentioned including a return label when you send an item, and of course providing your name and your phone number. So they've kind of fleshed out some details if you use the Cataloging Maintenance Center service for special collections cataloging. The other thing I learned is they're not making, and this actually was through a project with Galesburg, I know in the past when I looked deeper, they had done OCLC records for article clippings in a vertical file, but they actually have decided not to do that. So if you have special collections that are just loose articles, we actually will do brief records for those and not OCLC records. That's something, like I said, the CMC used to do, but I think they're shifting their focus since they're getting a lot more requests statewide, and they're trying to just keep it focused on traditional type formats. The only detail I'll mention about the Rails Board Cataloging Working Group, they're starting to develop, and Liza's on this group with me too, they're starting to develop best practices for cataloging. We have this idea of a Rails core element set, a lot like the RDA core element set, major bits of description, title, author, edition, publisher, all of those fields you're used to using and comparing, but this group is really fleshing out these best practices that can be not required, but suggested of consortia like RSA and SWAN and Prairie Cat. So this idea of the Rails core, as well as some more, we call them sticky considerations, things like monograph versus serial records for graphic novels, things like separating multi-disc sets or keeping them together. So this document is actually going to address some of the issues we've talked about. But what we're being careful, though, this group can't say one way or the other to do it, because that's ultimately a library and a consortial decision. But the good thing is about this best practices document is some of these sticky issues are going to be presented more as pros and cons, so you can see options. If you have a situation or something to catalog and you're not sure what the approach is, this document can at least get you thinking about advantages and disadvantages, and not so much you have to do it this way, but more of an idea of what the possibilities are. So this group, it only has 2 more meetings in July and September, and then we present the recommendation to the Rails Consortia Committee. So it's a very quick group, and we're moving along, but I wanted to be sure and mention those best practices. Okay, any questions about my update? Okay, so just to finish up here so we can let Roxy get started, I'm going to see what I learn about the next steps in the dedupe, and we may do an in-between meeting, virtual only, depending on what I learn from that, if I feel like it needs more explanation or if there's questions from the membership. So there may be an in-between meeting. We'll see how things go with what they recommend. So just stay tuned again to the listserv if I decide to schedule an in-between meeting. Our next full meeting is Thursday, September 14th, 2017, from 9:30 to noon here or online. It is posted on L2 and in Go to Training, so if you want to register, you can go ahead. It should be out there and ready to go. Okay, so before we invite Roxy to join us, do you have any questions? Okay, I appreciate your patience again with the dedupe trouble and the good questions you've asked. I really appreciate what we're doing to work together on. Okay. I think what we'll do is actually stop the online meeting, because for the book repair workshop, they'd be able to hear online but not see, which kind of defeats the purpose. So I'm going to shut that part of the meeting, and then we're going to do a quick furniture shift, and then we'll be ready for you, Roxy, to come on over. Thank you for waiting. Thank you, everyone, for coming online. We'll see you hopefully in September.